Grandpa Walter stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth. "Wait," he said. "You pay your parents' rent?" My fingers locked around the napkin in my lap. Before I could answer, Dad flicked his hand like the question was ridiculous. "Vera's 25. Adults contribute. Her sister has 2 kids. She needs help more." The youngest boy stopped kicking his chair. A water glass clicked against the table. Even the furnace sounded too loud. Grandpa looked at my flour-stained shoes, then toward the basement door. "How much 900 a month?" I whispered. He set down his fork. Then he said the one thing nobody expected. By the time I reached my parents' house that afternoon, the sweet smell of cinnamon rolls had settled into my coat. I had started work before sunrise, piping frosting onto 200 holiday cupcakes while everyone else in town was sleeping in. My wrists ached. There was flour caught in the seams of my black shoes. Still, I went straight to the dining room and helped Mom smooth the tablecloth. "Careful with Grandma Eleanor's silverware," Grandpa Walter said from the doorway. He always brought it on Thanksgiving. Most of the set was scratched from decades of dinners. But one fork had a slightly bent tine. I placed that one beside his plate. I was 25, and I had become very good at making myself useful before anyone asked. That was how things worked in our family. My sister, Emily, was 7 years older than me, growing up. She always needed something first. New shoes because hers pinched. The car because her schedule mattered more. Extra help because she took things harder than I did. I was the easy daughter. At least, that was what Mom called me whenever she wanted me to give something up. When I started earning money at 21, Dad asked for $400 a month. He called it responsibility. The next year, it became $600 because the household bills had gone up. Then, 7. 10 months before that Thanksgiving, Emily moved back home with her 2 boys after her divorce. Dad raised my payment to $900. I still bought my own groceries, paid for gas, clothes, medicine, and my phone. My room was half the basement, separated from storage boxes by a curtain Mom had once used in the guest room. Emily and the boys had the bedrooms upstairs. Every time I got close to saving enough for an apartment, another emergency appeared. Dad's truck needed repairs. The electric bill had jumped. Emily was behind on childcare. Mom never demanded money outright. She would stand in the basement doorway, lower her voice, and say, "I just don't know what this family would do without you." Then she would wait. I always reached for my wallet first. That evening, Emily arrived late and dropped the boys' coats across the couch. "Winter clothes are insane this year," she said, sliding into her chair. "I don't know how I'm supposed to cover everything." Mom didn't look at her. She looked at me. Then her eyes dropped to the purse hanging from the back of my chair. Emily buttered a roll and sighed like the whole table had been waiting for her problem. "The boys both need coats," she said, "and Noah's boots are already too small." Mom reached for the gravy, but her eyes stayed on me. I knew that look. It meant she wanted me to offer before she had to ask. I lowered my fork. Dad leaned back in his chair. "Vera can cover a little extra this month." Grandpa Walter looked up. "Extra." Dad gave a short laugh. "She helps with the house." That was when Grandpa stopped mid-bite. "Wait," he said. "You pay your parents' rent?" My throat tightened. I could feel Mom watching me, warning me without saying a word, before I could answer. Dad waved his hand. "Vera's 25. Adults contribute. Her sister has 2 kids. She needs help more." The youngest boy stopped kicking the chair leg. Emily's glass touched the table with a small click. The furnace pushed warm air through the vent. Loud enough to fill the space nobody else would. Grandpa set down the bent fork. How much Dad's jaw shifted. "That's not dinner conversation." "How much?" "Vera, 900 a month." Emily stared at me. Grandpa's eyes moved to my shoes, still dusted with flour from work, then toward the basement door near the kitchen. "Do you buy your own food?" "Yes, phone gas medicine." "Yes?" "And where exactly do you sleep?" Dad cut in. "She has the whole downstairs." I looked at him. I have a bed behind a curtain. Mom pressed her lips together. Grandpa asked how long I had been paying. I told him it started at $400 when I was 21, then climbed every year. Dad said costs went up. I said nothing about the 2 apartment applications I had abandoned, nothing about the truck repair, nothing about the childcare payment, but Grandpa kept asking, and each answer pulled another excuse into the light. "Were you planning to move out?" he asked. Twice. "What stopped you?" Mom's voice cracked before mine could. "We were struggling." I looked at her hands. No tears yet. Just the performance beginning. Dad pointed his knife at me. "Nobody forced her. She volunteered." The word hit harder than I expected. Volunteered. As if I had not been told the family would fall apart without me, as if saying no had ever been allowed to remain. No. Grandpa turned to me. "Have you received any financial mail in your name?" Mom stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "This has gone far enough." Grandpa did not look at her. "Then she stops paying tonight," he said. "Vera, you're leaving with me." Mom moved toward the hallway and planted one hand over the mail cabinet. The rubber band snapped against Grandpa Walter's knuckles when he pulled the hidden stack from the mail cabinet. Mom reached for it. "Those are household papers." Grandpa turned the top envelope toward the light. My name sat above the address in clean black print. Then why is Vera's mail buried behind appliance manuals? Dad pushed away from the table. "You're tearing through private property in my house." Grandpa lifted an already opened envelope. "This stopped being private when you opened hers." My stomach dropped. There were 6 envelopes with my name on them, some sealed, some torn carefully along the top, all from the same financial office downtown. Mom's face tightened. "They weren't important. You decided that I asked." My voice sounded unfamiliar, thin, but mine. The front door opened before she answered. Uncle Daniel stepped inside carrying a pie box and stopped when he saw everyone crowded in the hallway. "What happened?" Dad pointed toward the dining room. "Nothing that concerns you." Daniel looked at the envelopes in Grandpa's hand. Then his expression changed. "Vera," he said quietly, "did you know your payments were covering Emily's childcare and car?" Emily went pale. Mom whispered his name like a warning. Daniel ignored her. He told us he had overheard Dad and Mom talking in the garage 3 months earlier. Dad had said Emily's payment was due. Mom had answered that they could take it from what I gave them. "They told me you agreed," Daniel said. I believed them. The hallway tilted around me. I went downstairs before anyone could explain it into something softer. The basement smelled like detergent, cardboard, and the space heater beside my bed. I packed jeans, work clothes, medicine, my charger, and the notebook where I had written every payment for 4 years. Then I photographed everything. The curtain pretending to be a wall, the folding table where I ate, the grocery bag I kept hidden from the boys, the pipe where my uniform hung. When I returned upstairs, Grandpa had placed the bent fork beside the envelopes on the table. Dad was standing over them like anger alone could make them disappear. At Grandpa's house, I spread my records across the kitchen counter. On the left, I made a pile of what my parents had told me: household bills, responsibility, temporary help. On the right, I placed what I could prove: payments, messages, apartment appointments I had canceled, emergency requests that appeared whenever my savings got close to a deposit. The right-hand pile kept growing. 2 days later, Grandpa drove me to the financial office. A woman checked my identification and confirmed the account belonged only to me. The balance was about $45,000. My parents had never accessed it. They had simply made sure I never knew how to reach it. I changed the mailing address, email, and contact information. Only mine. A legal aid advisor later told me to preserve my records, keep communication in writing, and avoid making claims I could not prove. So I sent one message: "I have moved out. The monthly payments stop now. Any financial request must be made in writing." Dad replied before the screen dimmed: "You still owe us." I removed the basement key from my ring and placed it beside Grandma's bent fork. This time, I did not answer. The basement key hit the dining table with a hard click. Dad sat at the head when Grandpa, Uncle Daniel, and I walked in. Mom stood near the sideboard. Emily had sent the boys upstairs. Dad looked at the key. "You came back to settle what you owe." I placed a folder beside it. "No, I came back to show you what I already paid. He laughed. Here we go. The first page showed 4 years of payments, $400 a month, then 6, then 7, then 9 after Emily moved home. Nearly $30,000. Dad barely looked. You lived here, behind a curtain. You had heat and a roof. I also bought my own food, paid every personal bill, and covered emergencies whenever you asked. Mom softened her voice. Vera, we never wanted you to feel used. I slid the next page toward her. Truck repairs, a utility shortage, childcare, Emily's car payment. Beside them were the dates of 2 apartment deposits I had almost made. Both times. The money left my savings within days of Mom saying the family could not survive without me. Dad tapped the folder. You gave us that money. You made every no sound like betrayal. That's not proof. I pulled out the messages. Your sister has children. We all have to sacrifice. How can you walk away when those boys need you? Then, Dad's message from 10 months earlier. Starting next month. Your contribution is $900. Emily's expenses changed the household budget. Emily stared at him. You said it came from general bills. It did. I turned another page. One message named her childcare payment. Another mentioned her car. Grandpa gripped the back of a chair. Answer her. Michael. Dad looked at me. You're making normal family help sound criminal. I didn't call it criminal. I called it controlled. Mom started crying. Usually. That sound made me apologize until the truth became comfortable for her. This time, I stayed seated. Emily covered her mouth. I knew some of it helped me. I didn't know they were pushing you. You knew I lived downstairs. She said nothing. You knew I worked holidays. You knew Mom looked at me every time you needed money. I thought you agreed. What part looked voluntary? The furnace clicked on. No one answered. Only then did Grandpa place the hidden envelopes on the table. He explained the account Grandma Eleanor and he had created for me. He explained that Mom had claimed I already knew about it. Mom wiped her cheeks. We were waiting until she was ready. I touched the apartment appointments inside my folder. I was ready twice. Dad leaned forward. You would have taken that money and left. There it was. Not concern, fear of losing the payment. Grandpa's voice hardened. So you knew exactly what the money would let her do. This family needed her, Dad snapped. No, you needed access to my paycheck. His face reddened. You're destroying this family over money. I slid the final page toward him, a written demand for repayment of the documented emergency payments, not the monthly household contribution. You can respond in writing with a reasonable plan. Dad shoved it away. I'm not paying you back. That's your choice. My records stay with me. Future conversations will have witnesses. I stood. He pointed toward the door. Don't expect us to fix your life when you fail. My hand closed around nothing. The basement key was already on the table. I'm not asking you to fix anything. I picked up Grandma's bent fork. At the doorway, Dad said, You're abandoning us. I looked back at the folder, the key, and the total circled on the first page. No. I'm just no longer paying to hold you together. Then I left him at the head of a table he could no longer control. The first Friday of the month came and went without $900 landing in Dad's account. By noon, my phone lit up. You forgot your payment, I answered once. I no longer live there. Please respond to the written notice. He sent 6 more messages. I saved them and said nothing. Mom tried a different approach. Her messages were longer, softer, filled with phrases like family shame and after everything we've done for you. I read them at Grandpa's kitchen table while the coffee cooled beside my hand. For years, those words had worked faster than any demand. Now they only showed me the pattern. Emily called 3 days later. I applied for childcare assistance, she said, and I picked up evening shifts. Her voice sounded tired, not dramatic, just tired in the way mine had sounded for years. I should have asked more questions, she said. Yes, I'm sorry. I believe you're sorry. She went quiet. But I'm not ready to act like one apology fixes it. I understand. That was the first honest thing between us in a long time. Dad and Mom rejected my repayment request at first, Then Uncle Daniel reminded them that I had records of every emergency payment, every message, and every date. A legal aid advisor helped me keep the language simple and factual. 2 weeks later, Dad agreed in writing to a small monthly repayment plan for the documented emergency payments. It wasn't everything. It wasn't supposed to be. I didn't need to ruin them. I needed them to stop treating my future like an open account, without my monthly payment. The house changed quickly. Dad canceled a few subscriptions and postponed replacing his truck. Mom started tracking groceries. Emily took over part of the utility bill and stopped assuming the boys' expenses belonged to everyone else. For once, their budget had to reflect their own choices. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I signed the lease on a studio across town. The couch came from a thrift store. The dishes did not match. The bedroom was really just the far end of the living room, but there was no curtain pretending to be a wall. Grandpa carried in a small box and set it on the counter. "Kitchen stuff," he said. Inside were 2 mugs, a can opener, and Grandma Eleanor's bent fork. I laughed so suddenly it hurt. That night, I made toast and eggs. The kettle clicked off. Rain tapped softly against the window. My new key rested beside my plate. No footsteps crossed a ceiling above me. No one opened a door to ask what I could spare. I placed the bent fork in the top drawer and closed it gently. The apartment became quiet. Not empty. Mine. I used Grandma Eleanor's bent fork at every meal that first week. Not because it was valuable, because it reminded me of the exact moment somebody finally asked why my sacrifice had become everyone else's entitlement. I still loved my family. But love no longer meant handing over my paycheck, so nobody had to face their own choices. It no longer meant apologizing for wanting a door, a key, and a future with my name on it. I could help when I chose to. I could say no without becoming cruel, and I could forgive without giving anyone access to hurt me again. If you've ever been made to feel selfish for setting a boundary, share your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story. That bent fork used to remind me of the table where I was valued least. Now, it reminds me of the night I stopped paying for a place in my own family.